starting with the Arizona Cardinals and their biggest needs. I would have said defensive line for sure, but they've made a lot of moves this offseason.
They did. I think they still need impact defensive players at all three levels, which is not to say that you're wrong that they didn't make upgrades. But like, we said last year, when you read out their defensive line, it was like reading a preseason team. It was like reading the second team, right? When the second team comes in, it's like, I know all these guys, but none of them belong starting. And yet that was the first team. That was who they were rolling out there as the top players. Well, since that point, you've added Josh Sweat, you've added Dalvin Tomlinson. I think Baron Browning might be better this year than he was a year ago if the injury that he was battling through is a real thing. And, he has shown evidence that he can be a decent pass rusher. So I think they can be good, but you can still upgrade that, even with, Darius Robinson as well, their former top pick from a year ago. But like, you could still add another edge rusher. You could still add another defensive tackle. You can definitely still add another linebacker to make an impact. You can definitely add an upgrade at corner, arguably at safety as well. If you can find them an impact player on defense at any level, they fit into this defense still.
All right, let's name some. Who could be in the mix there in the middle of the first round for Arizona? All of the edges that we've talked about previously. Michael Williams from Georgia, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. I think they're all in play for Arizona. At corner, Jahdae Barron, again, for them. The inside-outside versatility could fit well there. Garrett Williams has stepped up a little bit, but it gives you the ability to maybe put Sean Murphy-Bunting back into the slot. Gives you just some flexibility in the secondary there. They could also be in the mix for all the big nose tackles that we love, the Kenneth Grant types, or the second wave of Deion Walker, Alfred Collins, big-bodied nose tackle. So, yeah, I still think there's more work to do on the defensive line. I also love that they attacked it in free agency and made it so they don't have to draft three of these guys, maybe just one or two in this draft to upgrade the defensive line in Arizona.
And then guard, I think, is the other spot on either one / both of them, I think, would be at least competition / could upgrade the starter.
I think that definitely makes sense for Arizona more. And that's another reason why filling the D line needs during free agency is important. Again, so you don't have to double, triple up there. But I do think that second wave of guard could be in the mix there. I don't think they're going to take those guys in the first round, but second wave of guards make a lot of sense. They could be Donovan Jackson in the second round, potentially, for Arizona. With his flexibility, Marcus Mbow from Purdue could be there. The one other, when we were debating, we gave them Jalen Knoll in the mock draft. I'll just say speed receiver because Marvin Harrison feels slow, right? Michael Wilson, they're more in the possession receiver spectrum right now. Straight up speed receiver for Arizona, I think is a nice need that they might be able to fit. So,
I mean, you could limit it. You could cut it off before receiver and say they just need an injection of speed on the offense, period. Yeah. I mean, James Conner is a really good running back, but he's not a speed guy. Trey Benson brings a little bit more of that, but generally speaking, this is a pretty slow offense in terms of skill position threats. They've got individuals that can they can do a little bit. Trey McBride is not slow for a tight end, certainly, but he's a tight end. I mean, they are inherently slow relative to 4-3 wide receivers. Greg Dortch has got some speed to him, but yeah, generally speaking, this is an offense that is absent significant speed.
All right, let's go Los Angeles Rams here. Their biggest need, another team that's done a pretty nice job with their depth over the last couple of years, especially with how young they are.
Yeah, so they were another team that I was sort of surprised by how good the roster was top to bottom when he put it all together, which is kind of why the whole Stafford trade talk at the start of this offseason never made any sense to me, because they were so close a year ago. Remember, they gave the Eagles the best game of anybody in the playoffs. Conceivably, this team could have been a Super Bowl team and could have won the Super Bowl without any changes. Then, as opposed to bring Stafford back or just blow that up and rebuild completely. Drake Holiday points out we forgot to mention Calais Campbell re-signed with the Cardinals for 1 year.
Sorry. Yeah, I knew I had something else in my head that they did that was really good as far as defensive line adds. Calais Campbell making his return.
It's almost a decade since he played for them. He left 9 years ago, I think, and now he's back for one last go around, presumably for the Cardinals. What a wild career he's had.
He really has, and he's still playing. He's still playing well. I love it. Calais Campbell. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, amazing signing for them and amazing career for Calais. Yeah. So anyway, the Rams, they bring back Stafford. They're ready to go again. I think they could use cornerback depth, cornerback competition, and obviously they need linebackers, but they don't care.
No, they don't care. They always Omar Spates, 7th round or UDFA, whatever he was, right? They just drop those guys in at linebacker for the Rams. I think they're a really interesting team every time we've done mock drafts in the first round for Malachi Starks at safety there, but really those corners, late first round corners are all in the mix. They're out of a second round pick that they traded for Braden Fisk. I like Braden Fisk. Just remember when we say this at the time, they valued Braden Fisk essentially as 2 second rounders. They spent their own second rounder. Yeah, they got him a year early, but this year's second rounder is going to Braden Fisk. It doesn't feel terrible because of the depth that we talked about. It feels like this team has, but I think they're very much in that late first round cornerback / safety mix. And Starks brings some slot versatility, safety versatility. Eamon Worry could be, thought about there. And then I think the second wave of tight ends potentially there for the Rams. I mean, maybe if Colston Loveland fell, I think Warren will end up going top 15, but if Colston Loveland fell in the first round, that could be in play for the Rams. But I think the second wave of tight ends, Mason Taylor could be just a nice, dependable option if he was there around the 3rd round or so for the Rams. Hey guys, just taking a quick break to tell you, hey, just over 50% of you are still unsubscribed to Check the Mic. It helps the channel. It helps to make sure that you don't miss any of our shows. So if you have a chance, hit the subscribe button right now.
And obviously, I mean, it's not an acute need, but quarterback succession plan, like what, the Stafford thing clearly is reaching the end, but the Rams have certainly approached it previously like, well, the future is its own problem. Like when this ends, it ends. But for now, like we're willing to accept the pain when that comes. I don't know how keen they're going to be on let's go. They've been a team paired with Jackson Dart or whatever, if he's available, sort of in the right spots for that. I just wonder how much they care about that. They're like, when he walks away, eventually it's over. We'll figure that out when it comes.
Yeah. That's what I don't know if I was just being positive this year, but I, ranked QBs 3 through 8 and said they all have developmental QB options, or 4 through 8. Find your favorite one. Kyle McCord, Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Jalen Milrow. Find your favorite. Is it a good year for that, or is it just we were just skewing positive? Hey, I understand the developmental aspect, but it might be a decent year for the Rams to just take one of those guys, see what you get.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they won't take a quarterback at all. I mean, they drafted Stetson Bennett theoretically because they liked him for the future, but I'm saying they might not be in the Jackson Dart market, at the top end of this draft. They might just grab a guy in day 3 and hope that they stumble into something with a year or two of development.
All right, let's go San Francisco 49ers and their biggest needs. They're the opposite of what we've said with so many of these teams going into the draft with so few needs. The Niners have been stripped down just a little bit the last few weeks.
Yeah, all of a sudden, the difference between what you imagine the roster is and what it actually ends up being once you pick away at it starts to become, it's the opposite way for the 49ers. So they need offensive line help again. They need arguably a left guard, a center, and an offensive tackle. If you consider right tackle is not amazing to begin with. Left tackle, Trent Williams is now entering the world, I think, of the tackle where you have to budget in missed time. When he plays, he's still arguably the best tackle in the game, but he's now almost guaranteed to miss time. Like, when was the last time he's played every game without concern? He's now entering the Teron Armstead, the Tyron Smith world, where you probably have to factor in, even if you're not factoring in who's his replacement long term, you need to assume he's not going to play every week. Defensive line outside of Nick Bosa is now like a catastrophe. It was already not great, and they lost Javon Hargrave, they lost Leonard Floyd. Cornerback too, because they've lost players in free agency. Safety too, like they need a lot of sort of second players at various spots. This is a roster that needs quite a lot of help.
They do. I think the offensive line. Look, they've done a nice job with the offensive line developing from within. Jake Brendel at center. They got Pooney last year to play guard. Maybe they'll just bank on their ability to do that. But I think they could be in play at pick 11 for Kelvin Banks from Texas. But the defensive line need is so great. Jalen Walker if he's there, Mykel Williams if he's there. Both of those guys make sense at defensive line for the Niners. They just have a plethora of picks too. So I've said before, I think this is a video we should do too, like which teams is the draft most important for this year for like this specific season. For the Rams, this particular draft for 2025 might not be the most important. For the Niners, it might be as important as anybody. Much like I talked about Dallas last year. They went in saying, we need a center and a tackle in this draft. We better hit on these guys. They were like 1 for 2. For this season, the San Francisco draft, I think matters a lot just because of all that they've missing. So they could go any which way. I think, yes, cornerback depth also makes sense. They're in the mix for any of those first or second round guys. But I think they're going to rely on last year's draft picks. A lot of those guys are going to need to step up. Ricky Pearsall, Renato Green, like they're expecting those guys to step in. But even with those guys added to the mix, we're still talking about starters who need replacements. So I think all of the defensive line options are there. The big-bodied nose tackles are in play for the Niners as well. But especially that first order of business to me is the pass rusher opposite Nick Bosa.
Yeah. I mean, the defensive line, it can't just be Nick Bosa by himself, even no matter how good the defensive lineman is. We've seen this with Myles Garrett before. Like, he needs the cavalry behind him. Like, he needs, reinforcements.
Let's wrap it up. Seattle Seahawks. Biggest needs for the Seahawks heading into the draft.
So it was the interior of the offensive line heading into the offseason, and then they created needs a quarterback and wide receiver, and they've since sort of patched those back together, and it now remains the interior of the offensive line again. Like, arguably, they need 3 starters on the interior, and to have for the last year and a half or whatever.
Did Mina agree with you on all of that when you talked about team needs for her Seattle Seahawks on her show?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I go to Georgia for all those. Grab the Georgia guys. Get them all. Tate Ratledge. Get them all. Jared Wilson, the center. Get the other guard. Dylan Fairchild. Just get all the Georgia interior offensive line fixed in Seattle. The receiver question as well. JSN, Cooper Kupp. Is there a really nice complimentary receiver? We gave them Jayden Higgins. Don't forget, they have the 2 second-round picks. So much like the Bears, they have some flexibility in round 2. I think Seahawks fans they should feel good coming out of this draft with 3 picks in the top 50 or so, whatever that looks like. Jayden Higgins, I think, would be an awesome fit next to JSN and Cooper Kupp there.
Yeah. Higgins, I love as a fit in this offense.
Or do they go speed with Knoll? Would that feel slow because none of Higgins, JSN, and Kupp, none of those guys are speed receivers. I know Valdez-Scantling's there, but that's a 1-year thing. Does that feel too slow? If you're Seattle and they need that injection of speed, that's where a Jalen Knoll might come in or one of the other sub 4.4 guys later in the draft. I would also love to just see some sort of speed injected to the receiving core, even if they did add Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, for different ways, but I think either Iowa State receiver makes a lot of sense within this offense. Knoll and JSN have some alignment redundancy, though I think they can both play on the outside and in the slot, so you can make it work. But they're very different skill sets, and Knoll can absolutely bring that vertical threat that it would change what they have.
You're also going to get the Kubiak scheme, probably some tighter splits. I mean, everyone's a slot receiver in the Shanahan, Kubiak, McVay stuff. So, yeah, I think so. You're right. Like, receivers kind of become a need, even though they filled it a little bit with veterans. But yeah, interior offensive line. I don't think they go Tyler Booker in the first round or wherever. I don't even think he's a fit for what they want to do there either. So they might be able to just go best player available and then circle back to fill in those offensive line needs with, again, I would look to Georgia if I have the IOL need this year.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.